I'm Werthmann. I was born in Austria and I lived 7 years under Hitler's brutal regime, and after World War II, 3 years under Soviet communist occupation. I came to the United States in 1950 and I became proudly a naturalized American citizen. I take you back a step into history. In 1938, in Austria, we had a very deep depression. We had 1/3 of our workforce unemployed. We had 25% inflation, and if you borrowed money from the bank, you paid 25% interest. Business people and farmers were declaring bankruptcy every day. We had massive demonstration in our big cities. There were two political parties fighting each other. On one side, Hitler's National Socialist Party. On the other side, the Communist Party, which were getting very, very strong by promising everything to the people. And Hitler ruled in Germany since 1933, and in Germany they had no unemployment, had a high living standard, people were very happy, everybody were driving their little Volkswagen, the little Beetlebug, and they had no chaos like we had. We had nearly anarchy in our big cities. And our police force were almost helpless. So we pleaded to our government to have a plebiscite, an election. Hence, we elected Hitler by 98% of the vote. Now, Hitler was a very clever politician. He talked like an American politician. How could a country almost 100% Catholic to elect a monster like Hitler? Only he did not look like a monster at that time yet. He promised us everything. He said within 2 to 3 weeks everybody would be employed. He would help especially the families who were in such poverty that I remember that my mother had a kettle of soup on her stove every day, and we baked bread because about 30 people would come knocking on the door just for a slice of bread and a bowl of soup. They wanted to work, but there was no work available anywhere. This all changed very quickly. Hitler immediately sought public work service. Also, we got a new government. Nobody was elected anymore. Everybody was appointed up from the city commission, school board, county board, and legislators and governors. He consolidated our 7 states into 4 states because he said it was easier to govern in 4 states instead of 7. Consolidation is a very, very important component for socialism, centralization. I discovered that as a lobbyist in South Dakota. I think 3 times we had a bill that they wanted to merge our 66 counties into 15. I defeated it every time. So what Hitler did, the first thing he did, he gave us free radios. And then he nationalized our radio stations. So the only news we could get was what the government wanted us to know. Also, the print media was being censored before it hit the street. Next thing what he did, he looted the Jewish banks. He took their money and then he nationalized our banking system. The next thing, he nationalized education. And this literally happened overnight. I went to public school. I was in 6th grade. We had prayer in public school before we started our class and after the class. And we had our priest speaking on religion to us twice a week. That morning, after the election, I walked into my classroom, and the crucifix was gone, and there was Hitler's picture and the Nazi flag on each side. And our teacher announced that today we don't pray anymore. We sing Deutschland, Deutschland über alles, the national anthem. And on Sunday, she said you could not go to church anymore because it was National Youth Day. And in case our parents would not send us, because it was compulsory, they would be fined. The first time they would get a letter of warning. The second time they would be fined, a very heavy fine. And the third time they would be jailed. So we attended every Sunday morning at 8 o'clock the program. The first 2 hours were political education. Today I call it political indoctrination. They were telling us that we shouldn't listen to our parents anymore. They were old-fashioned, and they were taking away our freedom because actually we had rights, that we should not listen to our parents anymore. They were old-fashioned fogies, and we could be free to do whatever we wanted to, and our parents could not interfere. Oh, we just loved that. And the rest of the day we had sports. Oh, we got all the equipment free for everything. Tennis rackets, skis, and the boys at age 16, they got motorcycles to form a motorcycle squad. Not only that, they were taking out to the airfield to fly gliders. So at the end of the day, we would go home and gleefully said what a wonderful time we had. That much better than going to church on Sunday and listen to an old priest who sermonized. And we had so much fun, so much fun. My mother was not happy about that. So when the next school term began, she announced that she was taking me out of that horrible public school and she was going to enter me into a private school. I would have an excellent curriculum, but not much fun. Sure enough, as we arrived, I saw a huge wall, an 8-foot wall with an iron gate locked. And as I was bidding my mother goodbye, I almost hated her. I thought she was putting me in prison. But she said, you know, someday you will grow up and realize what I'm doing for you. Well, today I thanked her 1,000 times over that she saved me from that godless humanism which was taught in public school. So we had many other things happening in our government. We had the Equal Rights Amendment for women. Oh, it sounded so good, but when the war started and they started drafting our young girls, and a lot of girls were at the end of the year, they had to serve a compulsive in the labor force. They had pre-military training, and then they were put into the Signal Corps and as anti-aircraft gunners. When the notices start coming back that they were wounded and killed, we realized that the Equal Rights Amendment, the frosting on the cake, and the cake was so rotten underneath. Also, Hitler nationalized our good health care. We had excellent health care before Hitler. By private insurance, we had very good hospitals, very good doctors that all stopped. Everybody would go to the doctor for anything and everything. My brother-in-law had a medical practice, and he said when he would come to his office in the morning, there were 40 patients waiting for him. And the practice, what he took very serious, he said it was like practicing medicine on a conveyor belt. And the government, all the rules and regulation. And he was a very conscientious doctor. He would only prescribe the real good medication what a patient would need. And if that type of medication was not on the government's list, since the doctors were all salaried by the government, they took that out of his pay. And his pay went dwindling down to almost nothing. And when my husband, who also was a doctor, saw that he would have to practice socialist medicine, he left the country and immigrated to the United States. And he marveled how wonderful our hospitals are, how modern, and what a good healthcare system we have. And needless to say, this is all going to change if the healthcare legislation go through in Washington. How sad. In Austria, all the research stopped, and the many good doctors left the country. We also had hundreds and hundreds of bureaucrats, and those bureaucrats, they were our SARs, and they wrote rules and regulations in everything, like the farm policy. They would go out on the farm and count the livestock. And everything, of course, when the war was blazing, food was all rationed. And murder the farmer. If he kept a pig for himself, he would be put in jail. They also want out the bureaucrats to count the chicken and literally ordered the chickens how many eggs they had to lay. We also had a federal police force, commonly known as the Gestapo. And they were everywhere. And it worked like this. If all the food was rationed, and we got 1 pound of sugar a month. And if somebody in your home, like grandma, passed away, and you quickly used her ration coupon to buy that pound of sugar, the next day the Gestapo would knock on your door and say, "We know that you did not turn in the food coupon by law, and you bought that pound of sugar. We are not going to arrest you, but you have to inform on your boss, on your neighbor, on all your friends, and you report to us once a week. And if you don't do that, then we will arrest you." So we had a network of informants everywhere. You couldn't trust your neighbor. We couldn't trust the mailman. We couldn't trust our friends. You couldn't trust anybody because they could be informants. Abortion was very illegal, but we had selective abortions. If one of the parents were not 100% Aryan and the woman would be pregnant, they would force her to have an abortion because Hitler only wanted to have an Aryan race, blue-eyed babies and blonde hair. We also had euthanasia. As my education advanced over the years, I was a young student teacher, and I was sent to an alpine village to teach my practice year. And I discovered that in that village there were about 15 mental handicapped people. Oh, they couldn't write or read, and but they did good manual work. One I know especially well was the janitor in the school. And one morning I looked out of my classroom window, and there was a van out there from the health department. And all these people were being put into the van. And so I asked my principal, what are they doing with Vincent and all those people? Oh, he said the health department came around to the families and they said, well, we would like to institutionalize them to teach them how to read and write and perhaps learn a trade like basket weaving. And gladly the parents agreed to sign the paper. And they left, and they were told that they could not visit them because they would get homesick. So after about 6 months, the letters came back to the families that their son or daughter died in a natural but merciful death. Well, we realized that they all were euthanized. In my research years ago, I found in the archive that 20,000 children in a children's hospital with handicapped children, they were all euthanized. They were useless people and it cost too much money. So, dictatorship didn't happen overnight. It took 5 years, little by little, to graduate up, because if it would happen overnight, we would have fought a bloody revolution as long as we had guns. Then came gun registration. We were told that we had criminals again. The only way that they could track a criminal was by the serial number of the gun, and that they could track him. And so we brought our guns to the police station, and so they knew the serial number and knew everybody who had guns. Didn't take long that they said the only way to get rid of guns and not cause children or people being injured by guns, and the criminal thing did not really work. We turn in our guns, then we wouldn't have any crime. So we were disarmed. So I say in my speeches, keep your guns and buy more guns. And as long as a nation has guns, you will not be attacked. A classic example is Switzerland. Switzerland has a good gun law. Their military has all their equipment at home ready to go. And not even Hitler dared to touch Switzerland, because Switzerland did not have a war for 600 years. So we should keep our guns and buy more guns. Those of us who passed the Statue of Liberty, we came to a country of unbelievable freedom and unbelievable opportunity. When the people fear the government, that's tyranny. But when the government fears the people, that's liberty. America is the greatest country in the world, if we can keep it. Thank you.